Broke up again.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of these crazy guys who just keep eating meat and can't stop talking about it. Today we have a special guest. We have Chris. Chris is a fellow Meat RX troublemaker slash meathead slash carnivore enthusiast that we talk to online frequently. And so we thought it'd be fun to bring Chris on and hear a little bit about his story and what's gone on in his life and how he came to carnivore and what's happened since he started just eating meat. So did you have anything you wanted to say about Chris before we get rolling, Justin?
Oh, just that. I mean, we've been talking fairly regularly for on a while now. I think I've been able to be there throughout his entire personal carnivore journey. At least talking weekly, and it's kind of been daily some of the time. Um, and I think he has an incredible story to tell. He certainly had some roadblocks. He certainly had some. Well, I'll let him talk. Go ahead, Chris. I don't want to speak for you.
All right. Well, appreciate the time and doing this, putting this together. Tom and Justin, you guys. So I'm gonna just share what led up to carnivore for me. I just want to point at two pictures. So this is me at 410 pounds, and that's me about 214. And so it all started because my journey is psychological, physical. It's a connection, and also spiritual. So when I was 7 years old, I was molested, and that kind of pivotal moment started a hole in my heart. Like it was just like, I remember after that incident, I went home and I remember eating a yogurt and getting like this comfortable feeling from sugar. And, I remember growing up in my house and my family would say, well, can't you just have like one bowl of spaghetti and meatballs? Can't you just have like, some Triscuits? Can't you just have like some orange juice? Can't you just like have some milk? And I really tried to take their advice. And I was born in 1979 through the low fat era. So they take the fat out and they zoom up the sugar. So you have this combination of a child that's trying to figure out what's nutrition and what is gonna rocket ship me into a healthy lifestyle. And I'm 41 and it's been quite the journey. And so, I went to high school. I was on football, and I was always big, like on the big side, and I didn't really like football because there was some people that were really angry, and they really wanted to hurt the other person, and I never really wanted to hurt anybody, and I didn't want to break a wrist because I also played drums, so that was a major concern for me. But everyone was like, I feel like it was a lot of peer pressure. It was like, come on, Cheeks, come on, big Cheeks. They would call me this kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And my father said, yeah, you should go out for football. And so, then after high school, I tried college. And, I didn't really notice. Actually, no, I didn't really have like an eating addiction around that time. And, I was kind of like, I was really not horribly horrible, But then I noticed that, like, let's see, this kind of really spiraled things out of control. My dad had a stroke when I was 18. And first time, because he grew up, he was like very passionate, never saw him cry. The first time I saw him crying, And I thought, because he displayed a lot of anger. And I thought in my mind, I said, okay, anger is powerful. And so since anger is powerful, that means I'm going to be angry. And that means I'm going to have resentment. And I'm going to feel powerful. But then when I saw my father, because as a child, you grow up, you see your father, it's like he's your world, at least for me, because my dad was so cool. We spent time, we rode bikes, we did a lot of stuff together. I had a really great childhood, but what I learned is nobody's the Brady Bunch. It's a show. So, what I learned is that when I saw my dad had a stroke, I was like really kind of just shaken up. And I remember working at the beach, and I remember I was thin, I lost weight, I think, because I didn't know I was depressed and I wasn't eating. And maybe I ate two times a day. I'm not really sure, but tried spiritually different things, and then that didn't work. And then so let's see, fast forwarding to 21. That's kind of when things fell apart for me, because when I was molested, I was sitting, and this really freaked me out. So I was sitting in the bathtub, and I just pictured a knife going through my leg. So it's the first time in my whole entire life at age 21, peaceful at rest, having an intrusive thought of a knife going through my leg, and it really freaked me out. And I remember being hospitalized for depression, and I was put on psychotropic medicine. And I don't know if that really started the addiction in a way, because the medication, it kind of numbed things out for me. I didn't really feel my feelings. It made me kind of just numb. And so I met this girl, and it was crazy because all it was popcorn, sugar, Jamaican food, and sex, and it's the perfect combination. I didn't have to work, she didn't work, and so we're talking massive amounts of weight gain. And during the process, I had a child, and then I was 410 pounds because it just kept going up. Not working, and then I was like, I walked like a penguin, and my knees would go out on me. Like they would just I would walk on, I couldn't even walk at this point, out of breath, just really struggling. And so I had a spiritual experience when my dad had a stroke, and it led me to be Christian, to believe in Jesus. And so that was an amazing experience. So I always, after that happened, I always prayed. I always just prayed more. And the coolest thing about it is I was going to this church, and this guy, Father Mark Kessel, which I'll never forget, great man, told me about Overeaters Anonymous. So I went to Overeaters Anonymous. I dropped about 70 pounds. And, no problem, dropped 70 pounds. But I was not being honest with my food, because I would have a food sponsor. I'd be accountable, and I would tell the food sponsor, I don't really tell him my food. He asked me how my day is, but then he wanted me to tell him about my food. And my son was on the WIC program, and we had Juicy Juice. And so I remember taking peanut butter and jelly, graham crackers, Juicy Juice, getting high as a kite, and dropping down as totally, it would put me to sleep. So here I am on medication, not want to feel in my feelings, numbing myself even more, not even really realize what's going on psychologically at this point. So, it took me a while. And then there was one time where I lost the 70 pounds. I wasn't honest with my sponsor with the food. And then what ended up happening was that I was in excruciating pain because I had hemorrhoids, and it was horrible. And I couldn't really, I was in so much pain, and I was, I was over the hassock and I was like, God, please help me, God, you know, and I was just honestly desiring some help. And the funniest thing is the next day I go to a meeting and this guy comes up to me. His name was Joe. He's like, hey, Chris, you ever heard of Overeaters Anonymous? I'm like, I never heard of this. What is this? He's like, you know, it's a 12-step program. It's a food plan. They tell you what to eat. People are abstinent like, you know, 10 years. You know, Christopher, why don't you just try it out? I'm like, okay. So this was about, I think, age 26. This is when I was 26. And so I went to Gray Sheet and I lost, so I was 410. I lost 70 pounds on OA. Then I went down to 214.
Why don't you explain it? You said you lost, you said something you lost on Gray Sheet and then you went to OA. Why don't you explain that for everybody? And I hate to say it, but I don't know exactly what Juicy Juice is. Is that
Juicy
artificial
juice,
fruit
it's like
juice?
high C. It's like fruit punch. It's like high C.
Oh, okay. So it's like like fruit, part fruit juice, part fake fruit juice or something, or
It's like crack juice. It's like you just suck on sugar, but liquid.
okay.
That's how strong that feeling
So
is.
it's just some kind of really sweet fruit flavored drink or something.
Extremely sweet.
Yeah, kind of like Talamundo.
Like,
What's it called? The Tampico. I mean, Tampico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Kind of like Tampico.
Yeah, Tampico.
Yeah, except like
isn't Tampico just like nectarine and orange juice mixed together or something? I don't know. I know it's really sweet.
Yeah, Juicy Juice is very similar. It's very very sweet. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you think there's a certain amount of drinking stuff like that where you go, well, it's fruit juice, so it's kind of healthy? I mean, I think we all kind of get sucked into that, right?
well, for me, I think I did a little bit, but I didn't, you know, there was definitely a problem. I was having it. You know, I didn't notice that I was having a problem, but I kind of noticed I was having a problem because when I was doing the Juicy Juice, I was taking these supplements like L-glutamine to balance the sugar out, L-tryptophan, L-tyrosine because of my depression, because I was hospitalized for depression. So I was literally trying to get situated. And Overeaters Anonymous is a 12-step food fellowship program for people who have food addiction, like overeaters, bulimic, anorexia, these types of individuals. Like myself, I was an overeater.
So what type of things did you see for yourself that made it clear that it was an addiction to you?
Well, when I went to Gray Sheet, because what set OA apart in Gray Sheet was like the military. It was basically like, if you don't follow our food plan, you're not abstinent. Like you're going back to day one. There is no wiggle room. In OA, there was a lot of justification. So people would like even me, like I wouldn't tell my sponsor in a meeting, but you know, he wouldn't want to work with me anymore. And that was fine. And I could get another one and kind of get away with it. And in OA, you have conversations like, yeah, I had this a little bit. Oh, okay. You know, still day two, like a lot of ego eccentric trip. And when somebody's an addict and they're in denial, they need the ego smashed because the ego is totally messed up in a lot of dysfunctional ways. It's not a healthy ego. So it's a lot of pride because, you know, that's,
so this Gray Sheet is like a similar to Overeaters Anonymous, but stricter. Is that it's called Gray Sheet? Is that
yeah, Gray Sheet. So it's a low carbohydrate food plan.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's again with the 12 steps.
So it's a food plan and 12-step combined.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when I went there, I lost the weight in Gray Sheet.
Can you? Sorry, you're the only person I've known to actually use Gray Sheet. What's a typical day on Gray Sheet? Like, how do you know that you're on Gray Sheet?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So literally, it's a Gray Sheet piece of paper, and there's proteins that are printed on there, there's vegetables that are printed on there, there's type of fats printed on there. You call your sponsor. You say, okay, so here we go, right? Breakfast, I'm gonna have 4 ounces of bacon. I'm gonna have 8 ounces of apple or blueberries or strawberries. but again, low carbohydrate. But pineapple was on there, and you and I both know it's high on the glycemic index. So there was kind of things that made sense and didn't make sense at the same time. But whatever it was just, created. So that was breakfast, and I would weigh and measure my food and be like religiously strict about it. And then 4 hours or more, then I would have lunch. So lunch would be again like bacon or chicken or fish, whatever, 4 ounces fried in butter, whatever you want to do. And then I would have like 8 ounces of like broccoli or carrots cooked in oil, like butter. And then I have 12 ounces more of like raw salad, like tomatoes or cucumbers or celery or whatever it was. And then I would have for dinner, like 4 hours later, I would have the same thing, but I also would have like 16 ounces raw salad. So again, cucumbers, carrots, whatever you kind of want for raw peppers. The peppers would kill my stomach. So a lot of gas. So the whole thing was, it was more vegetables than protein. So the bottom line was it made me lose the weight. But what ended up happening was I didn't know this until I was talking to Justin and Tom and the MeatRx people. I had no idea, but I was basically malnutrients. I was not getting enough nutrients, and I had no idea really what was going on before I met you guys. So I had no idea. So of course, when somebody doesn't know anything, what do? You listen to the program in 12 steps. So the program tells you, you don't want it that, you want it a lot, maybe you don't want it that bad. You got to want the program, you got to want the food plan, you got to do the food plan. So I'm like listening to this, but the psychological part is I got resentful and I got angry. So when I get resentful and angry, I go to, what do I do? Well, I had a relapse. So the relapse was me going to the buffet because I spend money on McDonald's. It was like $30 a day. I'm like, I can't afford that. So I went to the buffet and I just chowed down like crazy. So I gained like crazy, man. So it was like 214 pounds. I went up to like, I think I gained up like 186 pounds, about that much. I think I remember. And then, I was bugging out because I'd be going to the buffet, and my dad had diabetes at the time. I'm like, Dad, how'd you know you got diabetes? And my father said, because I kind of got dizzy and lightheaded. I'm like, okay, Dad. So I'm at the buffet that night when he said that, I went to the buffet, I'm eating ice cream. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting lightheaded. Holy shit. Because the fucking sugar was like off the chart. And so when I went there, I made a phone call to a sponsor and I said, hey, listen, I really need to go back on gray sheet. I'm struggling here. I'm like, I really need help. And she really took me under her wings. And again, I went down to 200 pounds and working out and doing like, what do they call, like CrossFit and, all this kind of, I'm going to get buff, ripped and stuff. And like all the energetic testosterone that like, I wanted to be into. And then the craziest thing about that is, again, I got resentful. I got upset. And then I went back out again. And then when I went back out, I think I went up to like 136 pounds this time. And so then I went back on a gray sheet again. But this time was very different. This time, I had no idea what was going on because I was losing the weight. I was following. I was doing things good. And then I started to get arthritis. I started to get pain. I had pain when I was first time on gray sheet doing it, but I didn't really pay attention too much because I was excited about the weight. I was listening to the program. When I was more into the program, people had cancer because people had bacon with nitrates, and all these things were starting to open up to me. And I remember during my search, the third time doing gray sheet, I saw Sean Baker on Joe Rogan. And he's like, yeah, Carnivore, I came out with a book. And I'm like, this guy, what does this guy know? I'm like, this guy,
what does this guy know?
Yeah, what is he talking about, this guy? So in back of my mind, I'm a compulsive overeater, right? So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, the Carnivore Diet, yeah, bro. So
it's scary. I can't.
Word, man. So beautiful. So in the back of my mind, I'm a compulsive overeater because every time I went to Gray Sheet. We had to say, hi, I'm Chris, I'm a compulsive overeater. And it was a brainwashing of a sorts, of a hypnotizing, of a psychological hypnosis that you're going to say you're a compulsive overeater over and over. And you just really start to believe it. And the thing is, I was, looking at Judy on Instagram, and I do admit to this day, since I've been carnivore since February of 2020 up until now, I admit, and I believe, and I'm not going to try it because I don't want to risk it. But if I try to have a potato chip, or if I have like I was at this lady's house yesterday and she wanted me to try this macaroni thing, and I said no. And she thought I was insulting her. And I said to her, look, this is going to set off my addiction. And she didn't want to believe me. I don't care if people don't believe me. I got to believe me. And so my whole thing was I'm protecting myself. Like, why do I want to have a consequence of a psychological trigger going off? I'm like, can I really? I don't need it, man. I don't need it. So I've learned, like, through my carnivore journey, because the craziest thing is I was listening to Sean, and I was talking to this lady in Gray Sheet, and I'm like, how can I not weigh and measure my food? How can I just have meat and eat meat and not have this and not? I mean, how am I going to even have this and like? But even before carnivore, there was times before I came on the Gray Sheet, I tried keto. So there's times I tried keto, but here's the trick with keto. So I would go to BJ's, Sam's Club probably over there, you call it. But I would go there, I would get like macadamia nuts. We're talking about the big bag. We're talking about pistachio. We're talking about caffeine, coffee. We're talking about sugar. We're talking about pounding it, baby. So I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm good here, but here's my insulin going up and the fats. And it just doesn't work, physiology, because, obviously sugar goes up, the fats, you're going to gain weight. But the craziest thing is I didn't gain weight. So I was really trying to figure out what's going on. But eventually I did go back to Gray Sheet. But the craziest thing was I went to meet RX, and people like, I don't have any joint pain. I heard Sean not having joint pain. I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And so I was doing Lyft at the time. I was driving for Lyft, and I was, I would have pain in my wrist right here, just turning like this, pain in my wrist. And I'm like, this really sucks. And I would try to play my guitar, and I have pain in my fingers and pain. I'm like, I can't function. I can't function. So it was really upsetting me. And then I don't know. There was one day I just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm doing carnivore. Like, I just made a decision. I'm like, that's enough. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, what do I got to lose? I could always go back to Gray Sheet if carnivore don't work. Of course, I always have a choice. So in February, I made the conscious choice. But before I actually made the decision, I've listened to MeatRx meetings. I've listened to people. I've talked to Raymond. I've talked to Emily. I talked to you, Tom. I talked to Justin back then. So there was a lot of education that was given to me. And there was a lot of wonderful advice given to me where it's like, just trust the process. And all this is very true in my experience, because I was coming from a very addictive, compulsive mindset where it's like, I want results now. This is taking too long, and it was a real struggle for me, because for me, it was like, how am I going to ever not overeat meat? Because my mindset was coming from all these years from age 26 to like 40 about being a compulsive overeater. So it was a huge mental twist for me to try to wrap my head around this, like huge.
So let me ask you, how many times have you overeaten meat?
I can't.
Most people can't, but some people can. Some people do gain weight on carnivore, but it tends to be rare.
No.
But it's good to hear that even somebody who knows that they're a compulsive overeater is it just that you're satisfied by the meat when you eat it and then you don't feel like eating anymore? Is that what it is? Or is it something else?
It's like there's a tipping point where sometimes I'm eating it and then it's like, all right, I'm full. Sometimes I want a little more. And I'm like, you know, I don't really want more, and then maybe I want more. And there's some nights I'm tired that I try to get energy. I'm like, man, I'm so tired, I got to go to sleep because I don't have caffeine, I don't have dairy. All I do is eat meat, salt, and water, and that's what it is. And in the beginning of carnivore, as you know, Tom and Justin and Raymond knew that I did have dairy, and you know, and I actually brought up for myself some historical interesting weight here, because from the here's the amazing thing about the whole carnivore story for me personally was I was 287 when in February when I left Gray Sheep. So I was starting to gain weight, right, on carnivore. So I was like, what's going on? I'm upset, guys. What the heck, man? So I was really upset about it. You guys remember all that. And so, you know, I went up, my highest on carnivore was about 299. And this is when I was getting really nervous because of the joint pain. And, you know, but here, you know, Justin would be like, just trust the process, Chris, just trust the process, Chris, just trust the process. You know, hearing this, okay, Justin, okay. And, you know, surrendering to that. There's a surrender that I had to have, that I wanted to have. Actually, I wanted to have a surrendering about it. So 299. So then I, you know, so that was 23rd of March.
Now you say you're talking about gaining weight, but what about your physical size? Were you getting noticeably bigger, or could this be you know, because you know what I'm getting at. Body composition can alter. It can push the number up on the scale, and your body can still get smaller because you're gaining muscle and losing fat.
Yeah.
So what do you think was going on? Honestly, what was going on at this time? If you gain fat, you gain fat. That's just what it is.
Yeah. I really don't know because I was just starting the process.
Did you have to go out and buy bigger clothes? Did you have to buy bigger pants or something? No. Okay.
No.
All right.
So the thing was in April 12th, you know, 299. So we're all the way in February, October. We're in October. So my weight is finally like stabilized. So now I'm like 292. So the amazing thing about carnivore is that I never went over 300. There, you know, and it was suggested from Justin and Raymond, and you know, just why don't you try not having dairy? And I stopped having dairy.
And when you at that time, what kind of dairy were you having, and how much were you having in a day?
Oh man, there was one time that I got milk from the farm, raw milk, and I had like I don't know 6 quarts in one day.
6 quarts of milk, so that's a gallon and a half.
Yeah, I was pounding it like beer.
Whole milk.
Yeah, I was pounding it. And then I would get home and I would have cheese, and then I would feel a little tired. Then I would have milk. So I used milk as, looking back on it, kind of like an energetic, kind of like I need energy kind of thing, which I didn't realize. And so for me, I had to cut it out because, like I learned from you, Tom, it's the only, like calves, they have milk, and then they grow up, they don't have milk anymore, they have grass. Lions, they'll have milk, and then they just go kill animals. So, you know, I understand that I don't need milk, you know. It's not a necessary thing. And thinking about it today, I think people got into milk in the dairy industry so much, and because I think it was just an easy thing for them to produce instead of meat. I mean, it takes a lot of work to.
Well, and some people tolerate dairy very well, and some people don't. And there's a big difference between having a little bit of cheese or a little bit of cream or a little bit of milk and having a quart or 6 quarts. Because, you know, if you're talking about whole milk, you're probably talking in the neighborhood of 600 calories per quart. So if you have 6 quarts of milk, that's 3,600 calories. So that's quite a bit. That's a lot of calories. So,
Yeah.
and milk has a certain amount of sugar in it, right? It's got galactose, lactose, stuff like that in it. So it's not. I mean, whole milk, is probably better than, especially whole, natural milk like you were getting is probably a better option. But that's a huge quantity, and so I like just to be clear about these things because, like I said, dairy could be a real problem for some people. But at the same time, I don't think I know anybody who's drank 6 quarts of milk in one day. Not without a contest of some sort to win. Maybe what are those guys that the cattle herders in Africa, the tall muscular guys, what are their names? You know what I'm talking about, Justin? We're
I
always
do
talking
not.
about, I
I'm
can't
sorry.
remember it'll come to me later. Anyways, those guys drink a lot of raw milk. They do, but they're on their feet all day herding cattle, out in the brush, and they drink a lot of cow blood too. They actually drink blood and milk together. So, I know everybody out there right now is screaming the name of these people, and I normally have it off the top of my head, but I'm forgetting at the moment. But anyways,
It's not the Hansa, right?
not the Hansa,
That's all right.
but anyways, yeah. So those guys, they do live on a high dairy diet and they do very well on it. But you know, uh, I think those guys do drink up to somewhere between 6 and 9 liters of fresh milk a day with blood and steak. So, but anyways, yeah, no, I like to give dairy a fair shake because it doesn't, the amount and the form of it's important, and some people do well and some people don't. So I don't like to just blow past it like everybody should stop eating dairy because, and a lot of times we can enjoy most things in moderation, right?
Yeah, but I think as far as I'm the exception. I think once I hit dairy, I hit it hard. It's not like I'm going to take a break from it.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of that's my whole point that I'm making here. When people listen to my message, it's that yes, I'm a compulsive eater. Yes, I don't have foods that trigger me. Yes, I believe if I have those foods, yes, I believe that I'll be in trouble. I'll be back into my disease. And so I respect where my journey has taken me, where it's continued to take me. And I don't judge. I don't care if people want to have beer, have whatever, but I can't do it. I can't do it. Alcohol never works for me. When I would drink alcohol, I would go to the hospital. I drank 30 beers once trying to ride a bicycle, praying to God, I hope I don't get hit by a car. I drank beer once, wanted to shoot heroin. I don't think beer is a good thing to drink for me. So, it's like I got to really put things in perspective for me. So it's important as an individual. So the story that it's okay to like admit that, hey, if somebody's an addict, it's fine, dude, whatever. But like, at least God put me on this path of more of an awakening to not have any joint pain, to feel more confident, to have more thought of things and people, and taking a break and trying not to be so compulsive and trying to think where's the balance in life.
Yeah.
And Carnivore has given me the mental clarity for speech and words that I never would think of. It has given me the ability to try to just have this kind of like a point where it's like, I don't really care what you think. Like you can call me a jerk, but that's on you. So it's not like I used to get upset at these things, but Carnivore has helped me to calm down a lot in a lot of ways. And sometimes I'm not the best at it. Sometimes I still get upset and everything, but it's given me more of a perspective. So I'm still growing, but I think mentally it's changed me a lot. I would never eat vegetables again in my whole entire life, as long as I live, because
we want to hold you to that if you decide to try vegetables someday, just to see what happens.
I know, man, but I'm a very strict. The only thing that I play around with is sometimes I'll have maple flavored bacon jerky. Sometimes I have teriyaki jerky, so that has sugar in it. But it's not like I'm slamming it down every day. Sometimes I have hot dogs. The second ingredient would be sugar. So I'm not sitting here and say like I'm a perfect squeaky clean, but at the same time, there's things that I could have and where it doesn't have me, and there's things and that's the discussion that I was having with Justin the other day, where does the body need a certain amount of sugar? Because in all honesty, I don't know. Because there's times where I eat meat, there's times where I just eat brisket and water and salt, and I'm doing fine and I'm feeling great. There's times that there's situations happen in my life, like maybe a relationship doesn't work out, and then for me, it's like instead of but then I'll eat the jerky, and then I'll be like, I don't know, who knows? For right now, this is kind of where I'm at, but like I don't know, I got like four bags today of jerky, and then I didn't, but
What kind of stuff? What kind of ingredients are in that jerky?
well, you got the sugar, you got teriyaki jerky, so you got soy, you got all those ingredients, but it's Trader Joe's non-GMO, because when I have the GMOs, it inflames my body even more, and that's the amazing thing also about this carnivore journey. Like I know exactly what inflames my body. Like I can tell when I eat something, oh, okay, it's that. So I'm very in tune with that. So that's really a positive thing. But I just want to give you viewers a perspective of I'm not like this perfect carnivore, and I don't think anybody's a perfect carnivore. And there's people that been carnivore for years, and I've seen on things that have maybe like or oregano or something, whatever spices. But I think it's really for the individual in the journey to find out, because in the beginning I had stevia and I had tea, and I couldn't have that anymore because it was
I
causing me
remember.
joint,
I remember you talking about stevia.
and it was end up causing me joint pain. So I stopped because of joint pain reasons.
Gotcha.
That's why I stopped.
Yeah, well, you know what, Chris? A lot of us came to carnivore because we had serious problems. Justin had a serious issue with migraines in particular. And I had really bad arthritis. I had really serious anxiety, and then also psoriasis. I mean, people think of psoriasis or eczema as like just a little rash or something. I mean, like I've got this little spot you could see on my hand right here, which is really nothing, right? But I used to have it so bad that like I would bleed through my clothes when I'd get ready to go to work in the morning. So, and it can be very painful. It can itch really bad, and it's unsightly. Unfortunately, I had very little on my face, but there's people out there whose faces are just destroyed by it. Their legs are split open because their skin's just falling apart. Their toenails, their fingernails are gone. It's a hideous disease, and it does frequently progress. And I never met anybody who thought it could be diet related. Um, I got thrown out of all kinds of groups. There was like, oh no, it can't be diet. You need to take this supplement, or you need to take this drug, or and all these TV commercials we see. You ever watch TV at all, Chris?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you see these TV commercials for pharmaceutical biologics, right?
Oh yeah, the drug companies push that.
Yeah, and that's what they're for. They basically suppress your immune system so that you don't have things like psoriasis and arthritis. It's a big deal. And I have a family member who's on one of these drugs that costs $60,000 a year. 60,000. That's an insane amount of money for a drug. So, I came from it from that angle, which, when I say psoriasis, I feel like I can't drive home enough. I feel really bad for a lot of people that I met, particularly in Facebook groups that have been suffering with psoriasis, because their plight is staggering. But these are the people that you never see because they won't leave their houses because they're in such bad shape. And then somebody like yourself, with an eating disorder that you trace back to, being molested. That is probably something people hear about a little more and have an easier time empathizing with. But we all came here for different reasons, and we do something that I think we all perceived as being extreme when we first heard about it, right? Just eating meat. That's ridiculous. Where's your fruits and vegetables? How could you live without bread? You're never going to poop again. All the stuff you hear, right? But we were all suffering in very genuine ways every day. And that's how we came to it. So as much as we can probably reach out and help a lot of people that suffer like we did, there's all those people out there that don't suffer that much yet who would really benefit from it. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, because every time we collect a story from somebody who had an entirely different reason for giving carnivore a try, and then having the patience too, because like you said, your weight can fluctuate in the beginning. You can feel strange in the beginning. Your body's going through adjustments, and it's not going to just change overnight. And of course, the mindset that most people enter with is, I gotta lose weight. I'm gonna be skinny. I'm gonna be sexy. Everybody's gonna love me, because I'm gonna have a perfect, awesome body all of a sudden. That's what drives a lot of people to try anything. But if you come at from the other angle where you're like, well, I'm really going to change my health, and I'm really not going to suffer like I have been. I'm not going to have to take expensive drugs. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to be as anxious. I'm not going to be bleeding through my clothes or whatever. And like you said, it does take a certain amount of trust. And for me, I put my faith in the fact that I kept reading these articles where I was reading about fossilized evidence going back 3.7 million years that points to the fact that we ate meat, right? When we lived on the shores, we ate mussels and clams and seals and fish and, birds and all kinds of stuff. And we left our piles of trash there as evidence. And then inland, we ate mammoths. We've been eating large herbivores, ruminants, and whatnot for all this time. This is how we evolved. And I mean, regardless of your faith, if you believe God made us, this is how God made us. God put this planet here with all the stuff going on it, and we evolved and mixed, and our genes were combined to be what we are today. And we did it eating meat for the last million years, probably longer than modern humans existed. Pre-hominids were primarily eating meat. So that's how we are what we are. That's why we have a shoulder that allows us to throw a weapon at an animal. It's what allows us to run upright and be able to see over the grass. It's why we have the whites of our eyes are actually white, so that we can signal each other when we're looking at something. It's our digestive tract that got smaller and our brains got bigger, the whole 9 yards. It's all that we evolved to eat, and clearly to eat meat. We have a healthy human being has really acidic stomach acid that's really good at destroying bacteria that might be in some old, less appealing meat, because we probably were scavengers in the beginning. We probably ate the leftovers that other animals killed, So when I looked at all that evidence, and I looked at the fact that meat is the most nutritionally dense food there is, aside from maybe blood or something like that, it became clear to me that we were eating all these foods that really lack nutritional density. And it, like, you could say, oh, Tampico has lots of vitamin C in it, right? But it's not really dense, right? It's just loaded with calories and sugar, right?
Oh yeah.
And so it's easy to fall into that trap that if we eat whole grain bread, we're going to be healthy. But they don't tell you that the whole grain bread might be destroying your digestive tract, right? All that fiber might not actually be good for everybody, and the studies are already there. Plus all the anti-nutrients that are in those plants. As much as we domesticated wheat domesticated us. We have a long history of being slave to the morphine-like compounds in the grains, and cheese. Cheese has casomorphines in it, or some cheeses more than others, and that may negatively affect some people and get them to eat too much cheese. So, and of course, dairy, there's certain things about dairy that may very well be unhealthy for most people, and be a trip up, even though they are technically carnivore, right? But like for me, dairy is like occasional little bit of cheese, and if I do have coffee, I'll put some cream in my coffee, but that's about it, you know. So, anyways, yeah, I just like to round out the conversation. So, what do you find yourself eating now that you've kind of progressed and you're having good success? What how do you feed yourself typically?
So I'm going to answer that. But the amazing thing during my research with
Mhm.
carnivore, when it kind of things, light bulbs were going off. So it was like, okay, plants have a cell wall and then they have a cell membrane, and it takes longer to digest that, and it's working my body harder, and it's got oxalates in it, and it has beta blockers and enzyme inhibitors, and I'm like, that really stinks. And so when you're talking about nutrient dense food, absolutely. And then I looked at the digestive system of a rabbit and then a coyote. Ours are very similar, like a coyote. So things were just starting to click biologically wise. And during my first time, I had beef and I had shot meat because carnivore was quite expensive. And so I said, how can I do this? And Justin and you guys were helping me. But then it was really, my digestive system was really not doing really well because I was just having liquid going to the bathroom. And now I have brisket. So now I actually have formed bowel movements. And I'm very blessed because there was a time where, so I'm riding out brisket now because brisket where I live is like 5.29 a pound. So like maybe 8-9 pounds, maybe like $50, lasts maybe 2 or 3 days. But the way I look at it is I don't care how much it is because I'm worth every single penny.
Yes,
Yeah,
you are.
and no doctor bills. You'd always talk about, you meet people, and we all meet people that are pre-diabetic or diabetic, and if you eat carnivore, I mean, I can almost guarantee, but I suppose anything is possible. Um, you will not become diabetic. I mean, it just be very, very strange, at least if you did. And so it's like metformin, any of that stuff, like you're never gonna have to worry about it, and that in itself, or going blind or chopping off your leg, you know, um, and I've seen, I mean, everyone's known someone by now that's passed away, or they knew they had out of control diabetes, and they end up going blind, losing a limb. I mean, that those last 10 to 5 years are just like, what's the point, kind of, they can't really see, they can't, really talk. And I remember my
And in the end,
grandmother.
they die of a heart attack, which is the reason why they stopped eating meat because they thought it would give them a heart attack.
Yeah, yeah,
And about your journey, Chris, just the thing that I love about it is the weight loss journey. It's still continuing. I
yeah.
mean, I get it. Like, I don't know if you should be 214. I don't know what weight goal you have, you know. But I believe under carnivore you can get there with exercise, and we're still working on it.
Yeah.
But the thing I love about you is the pain-free journey is good. The mental clarity journey is there. That's good. Emotional regulation is better. Like you said, impulsiveness. The fact that, what'd you say? Um, you can't overeat meat. Like, to me, I'm in the mental health field. What's my work. To me, I feel like all um, food addiction clinics, whatever, or food rehab, should all go carnivore, because because you can eat, if you eat too much, you can eat too much meat and pretty much be okay. If you don't eat enough, you can eat, you can start with 6 ounces of meat. We had Rebecca Farmer on, a few months ago, and she had the opposite, where she wouldn't eat, and she had some other issues with that as well. And now she looks so healthy, and strong. So
Yeah.
I haven't found you can use the same treatment. You can have the same meal for people, whether they're the overeater or the anorexic. You can have the same meal for them and get them both closer to the center, where the person's weight is more controlled, or where they can gain weight. And that's crazy. That's amazing. There's nothing else like that in the psychological or addiction, food addiction literature, and that's just so cool. And that just trips me out. It's like, why, I try and scream it to everyone now, carnivore, and I know, you go from skeptical to an absolute advocate, almost cult like fanaticism about carnivore. And I've seen that you were so suspicious in the beginning, man. Month 1 and month 2, you're like, I'm just gonna have a carrot and some celery or something like that, and then I kind of went more into plant toxins. And the thing is that it's not that we are trying to keep things from people when we're doing coaching. It's that we try to really meet you where you're at. And so like in the beginning, the first rules are like, well, eat till you're full, eat what meat you like, and that's it. Keep it super simple. Go ahead, if you like your coffee, keep your coffee. You know what I mean? Or yeah, go ahead, keep dairy in. If you don't react to dairy, keep dairy in if it's not really messing with you. But then as time goes on and we're working with somebody, as they have like different issues, as things start getting sorted out, yeah, you might have to drop the dairy like you did. You know what I mean? Yeah, you might have to cut coffee. The stevia, yeah, it's not a good idea. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? And so it's with steps. We're not trying to fake people out. It's that it's a process. And if we went to people, if I was like day one, Chris, no dairy, no stevia, no tea, you would have been like, F you, like I'm out of here, right? That's way too. But letting you feel the benefits of just eating more meat, and then just being like, okay, well, you're trying to lose weight, or this is your health goal, and hey, this might be getting in the way. And then you're ready. And then, I feel like I never, or none of us, I think anyone we ever work with is like, today you have to cut this out. I usually gave you like 2 or 3 different options, and pay attention and stuff like that. And then, you make your own choice, which is, I believe, how we all believe it to be. So I just think it's really cool. And I do see you continuing. I think once people hit like 6, 7 months, it's hard to go back, you know, because you've gained so much, I think, in that time. And like you said, I'm never going to eat a vegetable. You could tell me, Chris, is this easier than Gracie? Because I feel like on carnivore, it's easier to eat out. You can go to McDonald's and get hamburger patties. You can, most restaurants have burger and a steak, you know? Whereas that gray sheet, I mean, you can't measure at a restaurant. I mean, are you bringing a scale with you? Like, how'd you eat out on gray sheet?
Or
You know what I mean?
there's people that do that, but I had to really look at, and again, for me, it was the arthritis. And here I'm like 38 years old. I'm like, what? I'm like, you kidding me? Like I would hear clicking in my elbow, clicking in my knee joint. I'm like, what's going on? And then doing the carnivore. I don't have any clicking. I can't hear it. What? I don't have any clicking in my elbow. What? I don't hear it. And so it's like, wow. It's like, and what made me really stick with this for the weight, because I know you brought up weight, is because somebody told me, I think you even told me too, but another person told me on Instagram, I forget her name, but very nice lady. And she said to me, you don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy first, then you lose weight. And my story is very unique because I did talk to you about it, Justin, and you said your body is coming up with a metabolic, it's trying to heal, it's trying to get itself settled, it's trying to figure out what to do with all this nutrients that you lacked in so many years. So that's a lot of years. So you take like 26 to 41, that's a huge amount of time. And all the years from 7 to all the addiction, from all the sugar, from all the low fat, from all the, it's a huge amount of time of span time. So my body, and this is what I love, like, you know, I love people like, you know, Tom and you, because you guys, you work with people that you give them steps. Because when I was in Gray Sheet, there were no steps. It's like, you know, dude, weigh and measure your food or you're not abstinent. It was a real like fearful kind of anxiety. Oh, okay, I'll weigh and measure my food. And then like I'm on the phone, I'm like, okay, I'm obsessed about sugar. I want sugar. Like it was so intense. And it was very concerning for me. And then there's people that are in the meat community, because everyone sometimes is a little different. And you know, in the meat community, sometimes they're very fundamental. Oh, just eat meat and just eat water and it's like, dude, it's like when people come at me like that, like I shut down. And then I learned, and this is what I learned because people used to ask me to sponsor them, and I used to be like very dictatorship or they, or you know, very authority kind of,
Authoritarian.
yeah. And so then I had to learn, like from you guys, I'm like, okay, I'm like, just figure out what's going to work. I'm like, you know, just think about this and see how this goes. And I think it's a better approach because it's more like based on the person's experience instead of trying to shove it down someone's throat. And I think that's a much more.
I mean, clearly you would handle somebody who identifies as having an eating disorder differently than somebody who has migraines, right?
Right.
So, you know, and in the end, if you have some patience, it's all about figuring it out. Because, you know, like you said, you're not going to necessarily be healed overnight, but you are going to start getting better. So, you know, I tell people, look, your body's used to eating all these carbohydrates. It's made all these adjustments so that it can process as much as possible without you dying in a diabetic coma, right? So your body's used to all this glucose and this high levels of insulin and stuff like that. The cells are usually replete with glucose. And so when you start backing off on that, then systems have to start adjusting. Your digestive tract is used to digesting all these carbohydrates and passing all this fiber and losing all that water with the fiber, nutrients going out the wrong end, as it were. And then all of a sudden, wait a minute, you're eating nutrient dense food. Where's the fiber? You know, all that water's not bound up in the fiber. We got to get back used to absorbing that moisture again. And then, you know, these nutrients are, the food is densely packed with nutrients. And if your small intestine and your stomach are working right, your body's going to start absorbing them really well, right? So that's all different. And then all these cells in your body that have different lifespans. Some are only a day, some are, you know, last for years before they're replaced. All those cells have been, to some extent, have probably adjusted to one diet and have to adjust to another. So your intestinal flora is going to start changing. The cells in your body, as they turn over, they're going to reproduce in a way that's developed onto a new level of nutrition, and probably a new level of, where there's a lack of anti-nutrients or poison. You know, I mean, you know, people are always talking about the hormetic effect, you know, how, hormesis, you know, it triggers this reaction that might kill cancer. But at the same time, it's doing that because it perceives something as being toxic, you know, so you're having less toxic food. Yeah, people out there, every time you eat that salad, you're getting a dose of poison from who knows how many different plants, right? And meat just isn't that. In our minds, meat is this evil thing that gives you heart disease and cancer and blah 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 blah, all this and that. And then you come to find out all these fruits and vegetables that they've been hounding us to eat are really the things that are full of poison, right? Little tiny doses that most people can tolerate, but in the end, aren't necessarily doing us any good. So it's very different. It's a very different sort of adjustment depending on what part of the body we're talking about. And then of course the mental part of it, right? It's like I'm eating entirely different than what everybody's been telling me to do my whole life. I'm a little bit older than you, and Justin's a little younger than you, but we all have a very similar sort of like exposure to uh, of like indoctrination into what's the right thing to eat, what isn't. So
I mean, it kind of helped me. It helped me along the way because I looked at my parents and, my mother, she was on like, she had an ulcer when she was younger and she's a nurse. And so she was brought up with the medical kind of concept, community, and the low fat diet. And then all of a sudden I see my mom's health. She had diverticulitis. She had to have her stomach removed. I am sure I had to do something with the medication because medication, no matter what, breaks down the body eventually. God bless my father. He had a stroke when I was 18. He's still on cholesterol medication. So I see, I'm a witness of what not to do. And I'm thankful and very lucky that I was able to have an open mind to learn, okay, what not to do. And when I came into carnivore, I'm like, what about breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And then I'm hearing that this is all made up. And that when Sean Baker, I was hearing on the Joe Rogan where, these references like Quest Lab, like people get their blood work. Well, that was taken with a certain population. It wasn't taken with the people that are Eskimos and the people that eating seals. That we don't got that blood work. So you can't really, it's very driven by money and it's very political sized and people are lied to. And it's a shame. And then people want to, because as children, it all starts psychologically. Trust your doctor. He went to school for 8 years. Trust what he's saying. Listen to your doctor. But look where everyone is, where they listen to the doctor, unfortunately.
yeah, we grew
Bad
up
health.
with Wilford Brimley telling us we need to eat oatmeal, and what's his name, Bill Cosby telling us we need to eat pudding,
Hello. Pudding.
right?
Pudding. Yeah.
Chris, so I mean, I think we're wrapping up, but I mean, like, the thing I really want to get from you is, you're still fairly new. I mean, considering you're going to do this the rest of your life, right? But I mean, so I mean, the thing I got to ask is, so someone sees this, you were talking about handing this podcast out to other people. They're either thinking about it, they got food addiction, maybe they're day one, maybe they've gone a week and they fell off the wagon. You know what I mean? So what's your advice? What do you want to tell the people that are thinking about trying carnivore or are trying carnivore? What do you want to tell them?
Well, definitely hook up with the MeatRx community. Educate yourself. Listen to Joe Rogan, Sean Baker. I mean, that's like top-notch stuff. Look at YouTube, a rabbit's digestive system and a coyote digestive system, and think about your digestive system. I think that's biologically and educational wise. I think psychologically, people want to start to think like Tom said, like we've been eating meat all these years. The evidence is there, and I think there has to be more of an education push for it. And unfortunately, the reason why there's not so much of an educational push for it is because we don't get sick eating meat. And I'm going to tell you the amazing thing about my journey. I haven't got sick once. And so I'm thankful beyond belief. And, because when the body gets inflamed, the immune system has to fight, and then something comes in and, you're more likely to get sick. So this is amazing. So, I think I want to press upon people, like, have an open mind when you listen to this podcast. Try not to judge our experience. If you're spiritual, pray to God, think of something, and start to open your mind. Because if you're suffering, there is hope out there. Because I was suffering. I was suffering for a long time. And so my whole thing is I'm very thankful. I never thought I would end up this way. But this is beyond my wildest dreams. To be where I'm at, to finally my weight stabilizing, to finally notice what inflames me, what doesn't inflame me, to notice these very small things. And the beautiful thing about it is I only eat meat. And then whatever else I put in my body, I know. It's not like I'm putting 500 chemicals in my body with like plants. These plants have billions of chemicals. And so the beautiful thing is I know exactly what I'm doing, because meat is medicine and medicine is meat.
Awesome. Well put. Fantastic.
Yeah, well said. I want to thank you for coming on, Chris, and being so candid and sharing your experience. That's why I started doing these videos, is I thought if people just told their story, it would help people out there. So, and I'm glad that Justin's really been able to put a lot of time into like talking to you and stuff like that. I know you've called me a few times. I haven't been able to talk to you, so I apologize for that. It's just been busy as hell. But I'm glad you're part of the community. I'm glad we met. I'm glad we started sort of forging a friendship here from opposite sides of the country, as it were. We're probably like 3,000 miles apart or something like that, and we still managed to connect and hopefully not just connect now, but start helping other people more. So I have an appointment to go eat some brisket myself, so I'm going to wrap this up. But I'd like to thank everybody for watching. I'd appreciate if people left comments and gave us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and stay subscribed, because a lot of people get unsubscribed. And maybe pass the video on to some people out there who it'll help, or who will be curious about the information. But until next time, eat some meat, feel better, and don't fall down the carb hole.